Welcome back, my friends. It's been a minute, hasn't it? Put a note at the end of my last video and said I didn't know if I'd be able to make more content because I was getting so busy. I was only able to play a couple of games every few days, and then to also have time to edit content and make videos, it was just getting overwhelming, and I had to focus on what really pays the bills first. But I got a little spare time last week, and I turned on the recorder and decided to record a game. Figured I'd make a video, thought it would be quick, and here it is about 10 days later, and I hadn't finished it yet. So this was recorded before the new eggs came out, and I'll get more into that later. But in reality, I'm going to go through a whole bunch of builds, and not a lot has changed. Even with the addition of the eggs, this still stands to be true. I'm able to play a hyper-roll game every couple of days right now, so I'm not really going to be able to make more hyper-roll content for the rest of the season. So hopefully this will finish off the season for you and get you all into hyper. Without further ado, let's get started. Now, for the purpose of this match, the first augment wasn't fantastic. I take Disintegrator 1 just so I can have a little bit of extra damage coming from my snipers, especially against potentially high health teams. While this game is playing out in the background, let's talk about the state of hyper-roll as it is and what's happened over the last month in terms of patches and how it has changed the game. Or should I say how it hasn't. I'm continuing to play a couple of games here and there, and I am not seeing a major difference in terms of hyper-roll and the patches and how it's impacted the builds. It does change ranked, but not so much for hyper. So these builds all feel really valid for me. For those who are new, hope this helps. For those who have been here before, maybe this will be a refresher course or motivate you to get back into the game. Innovators remain incredibly strong. If you put it together, it's pretty much a guaranteed top 4. Now, I always recommend follow your augments, so if you're not seeing augments that are friendly to what I'm about to explain, then avoid it and look for something else. But in general, the innovators involve getting some combination of Ezreal, Zillion, Singed, Echo, Seraphine, and Jace. The question from there becomes, how do you build it out? If you happen to get an innovator emblem, then you go for the dragon and you use these 6 champs. Otherwise, there are 2 really solid paths that you can go. The one I like the best is to go with Scrap, since you're already starting with Scrap along with Echo and Ezreal. This would be Ziggs, Blitzcrank, Irelia, and ultimately everyone's favorite madwoman, Jinx. Now, this is too many champions, obviously, for hyper-roll, so what you would be doing is you would be ultimately getting rid of Singed when you get Jace, using Jace as one of your tanks, stacking your tank items onto Jace and all of your damage items onto Jinx, and you'll have a pretty unstoppable team. There's another option in which you lean into Clockwork and just try to pick up your attack speed on all of your champions. This would mean bringing in Camille early on, and then when you can find them, Orianna and Jhin. Similarly, in this build, you'll likely get rid of Singed, but instead use Jace as a backliner, pick up a second sniper to enhance Jhin, and then with Jace's ult, he'll be empowering your entire backline. With this one, you'll mainly be using Camille and your bear as your frontline tanks, holding everything in place so that you can destroy things. There's one final build which may be a little cray-cray, but it's worth trying if you get the right augments, and that is to create a Socialite Scrap Irelia using ultimately Jace and your bear as your frontline, and then Irelia to just clean house on things, and you'd need this. You want to bring in Senna and Gnar to work along with Seraphine to give you 3 Socialites. You also ultimately want to bring in Jinx, because that will give you 4 Scrap along with Ezreal, Echo, and Irelia. Then for Irelia, you just need 3 key items: Infinity Edge, Last Whisper, Blue Buff, and she will clean house. Now, the main game we're watching here is going kind of meh. I've found often that snipers aren't particularly strong early on, so you have to look for the augments. Our second set of augments gave me the opportunity to get a sniper heart, which reinforced that, okay, yeah, I'm going to go Syndicate Snipers. Picking up a misfortune allowed me to now have 4 snipers, but I have 1 lone Darius with a giant's belt just serving as my front line. I add a chain vest to that, so now he's got one of my favorite items, the Sunfire Cape. And as we leave this running in the background so you can see what's happening, let's move on to another hyper roll build. Now this one's a little bit new, although I've talked about it before, but I've seen Debonair become much more effective in various hyper roll positions depending strongly on your champions and augments. So you don't want to force into this, but if it becomes obvious, go for it. Now I am going to look at 3 main Debonair champions as your potential carries, and that is Talon, Syndra, and Brand. Now I chose these 3 because you're going to want to get this champion, whichever one you choose, up to 3-star gold, and you're going to want them to be the VIP. I find it harder in hyper roll to try to get the other Debonairs up to 3 stars, and you really need that for it to work, but you can do it with these 3. Depending on which one you see a lot of and which one you get VIP, you're going to build entirely differently. Now first and foremost, I do not go with just 3 Debonairs. I like to get to 5 or possibly 7 depending on augments. So you need to bring in Leona and then either Draven or Zeri depending on who you're seeing more of. So let's do this from left to right and start with Talon. Presuming you get a VIP Debonair Talon, you have your other elements, you're going to want to build in lots of assassins. So you're looking for champs like Nocturne, Twitch, Echo, or Kha'Zix to fill in around them, but you're not necessarily going to get to 6, so be willing to go for 4, and you're going to either sacrifice out Nocturne or Twitch. You just have to see how the match is going. Now for items on Talon, you go with the standard Infinity Edge and Last Whisper, and then hear me out on this, I like to throw in the Hextech Gunblade. The reason is because Talon does a bleed, which leads to a constant barrage of healing, likely going to Leona, keeping her up longer, keeping other champions focused on her, and allowing your assassins to take them out. Now let's move over and take a look at Syndra. If I'm using Syndra, I like to try to find more scholars to help enhance her. That would include possibly Kassadin, Zero Zyra, whatever you want to call her, Renata Glask, and ultimately Silco to come in and replace Kassadin, because you don't need to have 5 scholars, you just really need to get it to 4, unless the augments are suggesting otherwise. Your Syndra items are fairly simple and standard. Blue buff, Infinity Edge, Jeweled Gauntlet will level an opposing team very quickly, and make sure you throw in 1 additional Arcanist who will pair with Brand to give your entire team more AP. And last but certainly not least, if you get a Brand VIP, you're going to want to load up your team with Arcanists. Unfortunately, without a Debonair or Arcanist emblem, you cannot do 6-5. Decide while you're playing whether you want to go down to 3 Debonair to 6 Arcanist and throw in maybe an extra bodyguard to make Leona a little bit tankier, or go up to 5 Debonair and 4 Arcanists, and again, possibly an additional bodyguard to make Leona tankier. The Arcanist trait is going to impact your entire team, so it's going to give everyone a little bit more power, whereas the Debonair trait focuses solely on the Debonair champions. Look to your augments and items. The Brand items are the same as the Syndra items before, or you can just go for raw power with a Rabadon's Death Cap, but blue buff is a must for Brand. But look to your augments and items to decide which way to go. Speaking of augments, it's time for the 3rd augment in this match, and Sniper's Nest is the easy choice. It's going to make our snipers more powerful, it's going to give us an additional ashe, which puts us just 2 away from a gold, and since there are no more individual items, it's time to divvy up what we have. We'll go ahead and make Darius tankier for now. We have a second one on the bench. We'll also give Ashe the Last Whisper and a rapid fire cannon, so she doesn't miss, attacks faster, and her critical attacks will shred some armor and make everyone a little bit weaker. And now let's talk about the build that continues to haunt Hyperroll, and that is Yordles. There are two main builds that I see people using with Yordles, and that's either Yordle Scrap or Yordle Twin Shot. They obviously start with all of your Yordles, such as Ziggs, Corki, Gnar, Lulu, Poppy, Vex. Once you get all of those, you then have to decide which way you want to go. By the point in the game that you have 6 Yordles, you should have 2 augments, so I would use those as your guide. If you're getting scrap-friendly augments, fill in with Blitzcrank, because he will enhance Poppy's bodyguard, Irelia, because that will enhance Gnar's striker, and finally Jinx, who will serve as your 4th scrap and also enhance Corki's Twin Shot. You're going to use Corki as your main damage with the Infinity Edge, Blue Buff, Jeweled Gauntlet combo, throw AD damage items onto Jinx, tank items onto either Poppy or Vex, whichever's feeling stronger to you. The other route to go is to play entirely off of Twin Shot. This will just add the additional 3 Twin Shot champions, which are Gangplank, Lucian, and Jinx. Now, if you're getting champions and augments friendly to this, I tend to see people use Lucian as the carry here, with lots of additional damage items and or a Rage Blade to speed him up. It will make your team very, very strong and will carry you into the top 4 fairly consistently. In our current match, you may have noticed that I locked because, remember how I said I just needed 2 additional ashes in order to take her up to gold? Well, there they are, just waiting for me. So just click, click, and we have ourselves a gold 3-star Ashe and an Infinity Edge on this dragon that will make her attacks even stronger. The penultimate build I want to cover before we just focus on the game that we're actually playing at this moment is basically what we're kind of facing right now, which is the Chemtech Challenger. I still see this a lot, and it is incredibly, incredibly effective. Not necessarily against Syndicate Snipers, but when it works really well. This is just a little too strong for it, but let's go through it. The build is centered around Warwick with 3 key items: Rage Blade, Titan's Resolve, and Quicksilver. What you do from there, well, you've heard me say it a bunch of times before, but pay attention to your augments. You're either going to lean into Chemtech or Challenger. No matter what, you're going to end up with Tryndamere on the team because he is both a Chemtech and Challenger. If you're leaning more into Chemtech, you're going to pick up Zac, Renata Glask, Twitch, Singed, etc. If you're seeing Challenger-friendly augments, you'll build more into Challenger with champions like Camille and Draven, Quinn, Kai'Sa, the whole kit and caboodle there. But you're really going to use the augments to decide which one you want to lean into. I tend to like to go with at least 5 Chemtechs because that buff level is pretty good. 7 I'm not as thrilled with unless I have a really good boost. If I can get up to 9, then I'll go with it, but it's very rare that I get that type of advantage. So now let's focus on the game we're playing, where we just made it into the top 4. We used Caitlyn as an item holder for Zeri, and since we're going to be able to go up to the 6 snipers, we held a Caitlyn on the bench so that when we took her out, we didn't lose her completely. We still have a 2-star Caitlyn, and she'll be able to help carry us forward as we get to the 6 snipers, 5 syndicate for the full Syndicate Sniper build. With these item choices, I was a little torn between the Giant Slayer and the Morellonomicon, but I decided to pick that up for Zeri just so we can have a little additional anti-healing on the team. We've got the Sunfire Cape over on Darius in front. We've got the Morellonomicon on Misfortune. And with the 5 syndicates, all of my syndicate champions are going to be healing for a percentage of their damage, which is going to be really good, especially for Ashe, who is doing an absolute ton of damage at this point in the match. Now, as I mentioned much earlier in the video, this was shot in the previous patch, but I haven't noticed that much difference, even though they did nerf Syndicate just a little bit and added the Dragon Eggs. About the Dragon Eggs, I don't feel they've really changed the state of TFT or hyper roll, especially in hyper roll, but it has added a degree of RNG. So some of your reach traits like Innovator, or if I was going for the full 7 Syndicate, it may have been easier to reach, because if you get a Dragon Egg, there's a good chance you're going to get a Tome of Traits, and you might get exactly what you need. But yeah, I don't like counting on that. I'm not a huge fan of the RNG element. I like working builds all the way through. And I know some people have left comments saying that they have trouble with this build. It doesn't work for them. And I don't know. It's worked for me this entire season. I don't know if I'm just getting really lucky, if Gary's just at his desk and is making sure I get exactly what I need each and every time. But when I get 6 Sniper 5 Syndicate or 7 Syndicate 4 Snipers, it's almost always a first or second place. If there's a really good Yordle team, it might take me out, but this one is going to be a pretty easy victory. As you can see, Ashe just tearing everything apart as she goes, and we're able to finish off a really strong Syndra for the win. When the next season drops, I'm hoping to make another video to introduce whatever the next season is. Between now and then, I may put out some content that's not TFT related. I hope that's okay with you. I have some things I'd love to talk about that don't require me to play a whole game of something ahead of time, and I might make videos on it if I get the time. Anyway, I just wanted to show you I am still climbing, I am still playing. I got up to 4,700 with this build. It's still working for me. Hope the builds in this video helped and that you enjoyed the video, and have an absolutely, absolutely awesome day.